Craig, Gary, thank you both for doing this. I got a bonus episode for everybody listening today. Gary and I got to do a solo conversation because I screwed up the time. Let me admit this on here. I screwed it up, and I apologize to both of you. But the bonus episode, because of my screw up, Gary and I got to talk about his trip to Venezuela. So you guys on Substack and everywhere else will be able to listen to an additional conversation with Gary and I, which I think is fantastic. I wanted to also have this conversation with both of you guys because I think it's very important with everything going on right now. And Craig, you brought up something to me to both Gary and I right before we started recording about something that you saw online in relation to a United flight. And I would ask if you don't mind sharing what the story is.
Well, okay. The story is that a person, a man, normal looking guy, has on a t-shirt. It says, "Bombing kids is not self-defense."
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. With Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and bam, I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. I can also take delivery at any time. Extremely simple and less expensive than any other method. The do-it-yourself way to buy precious metals. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. I mean, look at how easy this is. The Vaulted app on my phone, I can access it at any time.
An obvious statement. And he boarded the airline, the plane, with this shirt on, and it was a flight from Atlanta, Georgia to Newark, up at New York, in Newark Airport. And the flight attendant apparently a Jewish woman or a Christian Zionist said that this shirt was offensive to her and stopped the flight, called in the airline authorities, and the supervisor told the person that as his shirt offended the flight attendant, he couldn't fly with the shirt on. And so he had to disrobe and take the shirt off and find some other garment, or he had to get off the airplane. Well, he didn't make a fuss. He complied and got some other garment out of his suitcase and put it on. But when he got to his destination, he tried to find out, what was this all about? How come having a shirt that says bombing kids is not self-defense, it disqualifies you from flying on an American airline when you have a ticket and you paid for the ticket and you have a seat? And he just got to brush it off. No one, he said, ever gave you any explanation. Well, clearly he's got a Supreme Court case. What this shows you is how far we have lost our rights. There's no First Amendment. It simply doesn't exist. And what's even more scary is if the Congress actually passes the legislation they're currently working on, it criminalizes criticism of Israel. So this man with this shirt, if this law passes, has committed a felony and can be arrested, indicted, and convicted in prisons. Now, how can we talk about us being a free society or somehow more democratic than Venezuela or China or Russia when you don't have the First Amendment? You don't have any freedom. You are the most unfree people on the face of the earth. And that's what Americans are. We are the least free people on earth. If you can't speak, you have no other protections. So how did the United States get destroyed like this? The United States is the Constitution. You destroy the Constitution, you destroy the United States. The Constitution is destroyed. The First Amendment is the First Amendment because all of the rest of them depend on it. You knock it out, you've got nothing. So it's reached the point that some low-level airline attendant can say, oh, that offends me, you have to get off the plane. Well, this should scare people to death. This is far more scary than energy crisis or oil price or anything else. I can't think of a greater horror other than nuclear Armageddon. So how did we get to this position? What kind of influence prevailed over the American spirit of liberty, over the Constitution? How were people who invented the notion of hate speech and hate crimes, nonsensical notions, nonsensical, how did they manage to destroy the First Amendment? They are our enemies, not the guy with the t-shirt. There's no discussion of this anywhere. This happened on a couple of weeks ago. I've not seen anything till today. This is the most extraordinary thing. So clearly, the American people have no future. There's no future. They have zero future. They are the least free people on earth. And they sit there completely unaware, oblivious. And oh, the Iranians are so awful. The Iranians are so much freer than dumb shit Americans. It's pathetic. It's just pathetic. The land of the free. Oh, yeah, really. America is the land of the least free, the unfree. That's what we are. And we think we're so great. We're already enslaved. This has already happened. Now imagine when they pass this law. Whew, boy. And when they pass the other law that integrates the United States with Israel, militarily, economically, politically. We won't even have enough sovereignty to change the law. So let's don't talk anymore about the American democracy. It doesn't exist. It hasn't existed for a long time. Once money got into it, money rules. And the government serves money. And that's all there is to it. The lobby groups that line K Street in Washington, they are the ones who write the laws. The laws are written to serve their financial interest, no one else's. It's been like that a long time. And now we're going to be integrated with another country. We will become Israel America. And we don't have First Amendment rights, which means the Constitution cannot protect us. I don't know if there's any better definition of tyranny than that. And that's what we have.
What do you think the likelihood is of both of these things getting passed through legislation?
90%.
Well, I'd say 100. The guy that the California congressman that just went to Israel, went to the West Bank, and the settlers there, armed, confronted him. And then the IDF supported the settlers, came back, and he and Thomas Massey tried to stop the Section 219 in the National Defense Authorization Act that merges our militaries, and which also, well, to some degree, deals with the ability to criticize Israel. And their bill, of course, was killed in committee. Never went anywhere. That just happened in the last day or so. Our Congress people are bought and paid for by AIPAC, the Israeli lobby that should be a foreign registered lobby. But they've gotten away with the ability to buy our Congress. And of course, they control our media. Our media is not going to tell the story. This NDA, Section 219, is just unbelievable that we would do this. And it's also unbelievable that we would criminalize the criticism of Israel in this country. You can criticize America, you can criticize any other country on the planet, but not Israel. And here we're about to merge our militaries where Israel is actively committing genocide. And all the international agencies, they have warrants out on Netanyahu. And we can't criticize them, and we're going to merge our military. It's unbelievable. However, the media is not covering this, so people are not awake to what's happening. I've been saying for years, I'm an American, and in this country, I'll criticize anybody or any government that I want to. And by the way, I'm going to continue to criticize anybody I want to. Unfortunately, I may be faced with a crime, a criminal charge for criticizing a country that's in the middle of genocide. It's extraordinary. And this country is what got us into Iran, which is a no-win situation. Right. There's no way to get out of this Iranian situation without tremendous consequences. So the American people really need to wake up on this issue. We should be able to criticize any country that we choose, and maybe especially Israel at this time. And the idea that we would give the Israeli Defense Forces access to all of our secrets, all of our technology, and merge with them like this is insane. It is so unconstitutional, so un-American, so stupid. And yet it's imminent right now that it's going to happen here in a few weeks.
I agree with everything Gary said, except I'm not sure, even if the people were awake, that they're capable of doing anything about it.
Well, I agree with that.
On the other hand, if they realize that they're facing destruction as free people, they might remember what Thomas Jefferson told them, which was every so often the tree of liberty has to be watered with the blood of tyrants
and patriots. And
that requires, I always leave the patriots off because it's the tyrants that I won't kill.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson, he didn't get it right, but so you've corrected him. Okay.
I want to read something that I put on my X account a couple of days ago, and I think it made me think of it while you guys were just talking. The whole country is just a money-sucking and vacuuming operation that takes advantage of the people that have been propagandized into believing it's we.
Yeah, good. Well done.
Yeah.
Well, so we three understand what's going on and agree.
Yeah,
If there were 30 million of us, we might be able to do something about it.
that's kind of the hope, you know.
30 million heavily armed who have no reluctance to pulling the trigger. That's what it'll take.
Let me ask you guys something, because talking about what you've just described with the First Amendment and then the merging of the militaries, I keep going back to what happened in 2020, and you saw how docile people were throughout the lockdowns. Do you
Yeah,
think people learn from that? Craig, I'm going to start with you.
I don't know. I don't know. I think fear usually works. And if you can create fear, the people buckle. That's that's what usually works. It might not work if people have experienced on themselves and their family and their friends something like a genocide. They may see the fear as an enemy. So I don't know. And who knows what they'll release next? Who knows? You have to remember, uh, on her last day, I think it was her last day in office, Tulsi Gabbard, the Secretary of
National Director of National
Intelligence.
Intelligence, yeah,
Oh, there we
National
go.
Intelligence, Director of National Intelligence. She released information that the United States was operating 120 bio-war labs in 70 countries. Well, what are they doing? What is 120 bio-war? What are they doing? They're creating these things to turn loose on us, to scare us to death. And then we get locked down or we get forced to take some deadly backs. Who knows? I mean, I don't understand how the United States can have even one biowarfare lab. Is they all strictly illegal and we signed the agreement not to have them? So we take them abroad, we hide them in other countries. And now you got to ask yourself, how did they get away with this? How come this isn't a media issue or a congressional issue? Why isn't the Justice Department arresting the people doing this? Oh,
No.
and we've had the Russians provide information that they captured in the Ukraine of American biowar labs who are operating there, and nothing happens. This is strictly illegal. And so a guy can't get on an airplane and has a shirt that says killing kids is not self-defense, but the United States can make illegal pathogens and illegal biowarfare labs. It has to hide in foreign countries. There's no consequence. Just like there's no consequence to Israel of genocide. Everyone just stands aside. Oh, and that's what this guy's criticizing in his shirt. Bombing kids is not self-defense. Well, he's talking about what's going on in Gaza and Lebanon. You know what the Israelis have been doing in Gaza for 79 years? They've started in Lebanon. They're starting to break off pieces of Lebanon and add them into Israel. And nothing happens. What happens is Trump runs over and bribes the weak government in Beirut, Lebanon, to forbid the Hezbollah militia from defending southern Lebanon. and Trump arranges a fake peace deal between Beirut and Israel that says Hezbollah has to disarm. And you can see the whole purpose is so the Israelis can be unopposed in southern Lebanon as they try to steal it. This is our president. I don't understand how anyone supports him. Anyone. He's unsupportable. So these kinds of questions, they don't get addressed because it upsets people so much they don't know what to do. They can't believe it. It's just too threatening. And this is why it succeeds. Oh, our government would never do that. Oh, Trump would never do that. All the bad guys are somewhere else. And that's why it succeeds. The people are too weak-willed, too weak-minded to confront the reality. It scares them. So they move over into a false narrative. It's a more pleasing reality, and that's where they are. And they have their 4th of July speeches and all that bullshit. I called it, what did I call it? Fireworks, beer, and mindlessness. So that's America. How did it get that way? It wasn't that way when I was born. That's not the country I grew up in. During my professional life, it disappeared. The country's gone. It is not here. There is no America. It's a geographical location only. That's all America is. It's a geographical location. It doesn't even have borders, as the immigrant invaders have proven. So it's a geographical location without borders. That's all. It has no content.
What were your guys' thoughts when you heard Trump say he's restarting the war?
Well, how is he going to look? Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Iranian situation. Gary made a suggestion we talk about that. So let me show you what's really going on, and you will see that there's no awareness of this anywhere. Certainly not among blustering Trump, nowhere in the White House, nowhere in Congress, nowhere in the media, nowhere in Europe, not even in Iran. Is there any awareness? Okay, the way the situation is, well, first of all, I said at the beginning, there'll be no peace deal. Why? Because Israel is against it. Israel is the only country with an agenda. The agenda is Greater Israel. That is Israeli expansion. So how is there going to be a peace deal? As long as that agenda is the operating principle of the Israeli government, there can never be any peace. And never have the Arabs, and not even the Palestinians, not the Iranians, nobody has ever brought this issue up and say, hey, how can there be peace when Israel's agenda is to dominate the Middle East and wipe out all the countries and absorb them into Israel? That's what Great Israel means. How can there be peace? What are you talking about, peace? What we needed to negotiate is the Greater Israel agenda. Are they willing to give up this agenda? If not, we've got to destroy them or they're going to destroy us. That's the only question that's relevant in the Middle East. No other question is relevant. And it's never raised. Not even the people suffering the consequences of the policy raise it. Well, what's going on right now? Well, we know that Netanyahu deceived Trump, told him Iran would collapse in 3 days, made a fool out of the President of the United States. He made a total fool out of the President of the United States, who was running around saying, they'll collapse in 3 days. We own the country, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it was so shameful to be an American and have a president this stupid, out demonstrating what a naive idiot he is under Israel's thumb, following Netanyahu's orders. How can you be a proud American when you got that kind of an idiot who's president? So what happens? They don't collapse. They kick our butt. They damage our bases in the Middle East. They knock out our radars. They penetrate the impenetrable Iron Dome and are tearing Tel Aviv to pieces. And what happens? Oh, the great Trump, who's conquered Iran, is begging for a ceasefire. He even announces arbitrarily one on his own to get out from under the destruction that he can't do anything about. So what did the Iranians do? Well, they stupidly agreed to a ceasefire. Why? They were on the verge of victory. They could have dictated peace terms. They had won, and they gave it away. So now, we're going to have a memorandum of understanding. We're going to have peace talks, blah, blah. I said, no, you're not. Israel has already said they don't accept it. So the Iranians knew that, and yet they agreed to go to peace talks. Well, the peace talks didn't have any chance. Everybody that had any sense knew that. So what we got into was a tit for tat. Washington hits Iran. Iran hits the American bases in the Persian Gulf. Washington hits Iran. Iran hits back. Tit for tat, tit for tat. Who's the source of the violence? Israel. But Israel bears no cost. All the costs are on the American bases and on the Iranian territory. And Israel sits there, the source of the violence, and pays no price. Well, how did that happen? How come when Iran gets hit by the Americans, why doesn't it realize that the Americans are just an agent for Israel? Why hit back at the Americans? Why not hit back at Israel? And then Israel bears the cost. As long as Israel doesn't bear any cost, this can go on forever. So why is Iran protecting Israel from the cost of Israel's own aggression? The only reason Washington's attacking Iran is because of Israel. And yet, here's the Iranians, they can't even understand that. And they don't realize they are protecting Israel by not hitting Israel. So Israel has no incentive whatsoever to stop the aggression. Well, this is an amazing thing. This is quite amazing. Now, what we also see happening, and this is a new development, I think I wrote about it Monday, late Monday. Anytime you have the initiative, you have to use it, otherwise you lose it. And when the Iranians stupidly agreed to a ceasefire that could go nowhere, they lost the initiative. And the United States went to work with Turkey, with Russia, with Putin's advisor, Kirill Dmitriev, and they put together a plan that Turkey would transfer the Russian S-400 air defense system to the Persian Gulf oil fiefdoms. And in exchange, the Americans would let Turkey back into the F-35 fighter program. When Turkey bought this air defense system from Russia, the Americans punished them by removing them from the F-35 jet fighters. They couldn't have any access to it. They couldn't buy any. They couldn't know about it and all the rest. And Turkey's decided they'd rather have these airplanes than the air defense, which is a stupid decision. But I don't think it was actually a decision. I think it was a bought and paid for decision. Big amounts of money changed hands. And Kirill Dmitriev told Putin, said, look, let's keep sucking up to Trump. Remember now, our policy is trust in Trump. And so if we help Trump out of the problem he's in the Middle East, where he cannot defend against the Iranian missiles, and neither can Israel, we'll make a big brownie point. And maybe we'll be rewarded. He'll take all the sanctions off our oligarchs so they can have access to their money and their business connections. And the way we are going to get out of this Ukrainian war is we're going to make so many business deals with the Americans that they see more interest in our business relationships than in carrying on a war against us in Ukraine. So all of that produces a situation where there was a newspaper report that I saw Monday for the first time that says Turkey, this is from the Turkish newspapers. Turkey has agreed to transfer the S-400 to, it was one of three of the oil-producing states, two Gulf states and Saudi Arabia. So one of those three would get these. Well, the S-400 is, I'm not a weapons expert, but the S-400, in my understanding, is the state of the art. It's far beyond any American capability, far beyond. And it's capable of stopping the Iranian ballistic missiles. So it disarms Iran. It completely disarms Iran. And I don't know what the range of this thing is, but I think it includes the entire Persian Gulf and probably Israel and Jordan. Well, the question is, how many of these things has Turkey got? Oh, it doesn't matter. You have to remember, we were never going to give even one long-range missile to Ukraine, and now Trump has given them the manufacturing rights to produce our Patriot missiles and our Tomahawk missiles. So they can make all the missiles they want to use deep inside Russia. And these missiles have already done tremendous damage. Russia has had to stop exporting diesel fuel, and it is being forced to look for it abroad, to buy abroad, because the Iranian missiles made in Germany, transported to Ukraine without any Russian interference, targeted by Americans, have knocked out a great deal of Russian refining capability. Well, we're never going to give them not even one missile, and now we've given them the rights to produce our missiles. So how long do you think there'll only be the Turkish S-400? In a week, there'll be 3 times as many. A month, 10 times. So, in fact, John Hilmer quotes a Russian source that says, oh yes, within a year, the Russians will have sold them to everybody in the Middle East, except Iran. So what's the situation then? Okay, the country responsible for the violence bears no cost. All the cost is paid by the Americans and the Iranians. The Iranians got sucked into tit for tat. Tit for tat is not war. There's no war plan. There's no strategy. There's no plan on how to defeat the enemy. It's just that, and the Iranians advertise this. They say, we don't attack anybody. We only defend. Well, they don't even understand they're at war. How can you say we don't attack anybody and be at war? If they're not prepared to attack, they're not at war. They don't even know they're at war. And their hesitation when they gave up the strategic advantage, and now already the Americans have found a way around it. And the Turks and the Russians are going to bail out Trump. And the Turks' reward, along with bagfuls of money, is they get accepted again in the F-35 fighter program. And the Russians' reward, if Kirill Dmitriev is correct, is we got brownie points with Trump. We got him out of a hot spot. Now they'll be able to block the Iranian missiles, and this will mean the Iranians are disarmed. And then finally, I know I've been going on, but it's a big story. Finally, we have another indication the Iranians have no idea what's going on because they actually think that the weapon they have is the Strait of Hormuz. And they say, we'll just stop the oil flows. And closing the strait could also be accompanied by the Yemeni blowing up the Saudi pipeline into the Red Sea. So that would cut off the Saudi oil. And so the impact on the oil market could be great. And so they're saying, okay, this will bring America to her knees. No, it might look like that. And it might be the initial effect. It could start that way. It could cause a financial crisis. It could do damage. But ask yourself, if we believe the statements that the United States is energy self-sufficient, is the United States government going to let the oil companies sell American oil at the world price in order to maximize its profits and therefore be unable to get its jet fighters off the ground? No. All the oil markets will be segmented. The countries that have oil will have a low price. The countries without oil will have a high price. But the United States will not be one of those countries. And so once the oil market is segregated or segmented, the Iranians haven't any power. So here's the situation. We've got two massive wars brewing, one in the Middle East, because a situation like this can only be resolved with massive violence. One's in the Middle East, the other's in the West with Russia, because Russia has done the same thing. It's refused to accept it's at war. Putin calls all the attacks deep into Russia terrorist operations. He won't even acknowledge that it's war. It's a terrorist operation. I don't have to do anything about it. And what has happened throughout Europe, we see more and more willingness to organize militarily against Russia. We see the breakdown and long established taboos like Finland and Latvia have had long-standing policies that they will accept no nuclear weapons on their territory. And now both have said, yes, we'll have the American nuclear weapons on Russia's border on our territory. So you can see how this war is expanding. It's now not in Donbass. It's deep into Russia, and it's soon going to be all over Europe. The missiles that the Ukrainians are currently using with American guidance and targeting are made in Germany. They are the state of the art. They're the best. Well, the Russian doctrine requires Putin to hit that factory in Germany. And he hasn't. And it's causing a lot of trouble in Russia. The military is getting more and more concerned that this is spinning out of their control. They're going to be attacked from all directions, and nuclear missile bases everywhere on their borders. And the idiot they have for president is sitting there pretending they're not even at war. They're having a special military operation in Donbass. So what's going on in all the Russian refineries that are disappearing? So we're headed to two major conflicts. They're going to be major. And the worst imagined oil crisis doesn't even measure on the scale of what will consequences of these conflicts. And there is no discussion anywhere. Read Foreign Affairs, the so-called leadership journal of the American foreign policy community. There's no intelligence in it. Follow Johnson's Russian list. He publishes it almost every day. You can't find anything that's relevant to what's actually going on. They're all talking about nonsense and theories or false narratives. They all debate the properties of a false narrative. So there's no awareness. There's none. There's no comprehension, not even by the most threatened parties, like Iran and Russia. Their own leadership has no idea of what they're confronting. Well, if nobody understands reality, how do you deal with it? You can't deal with it. It's loose. It's the four horsemen. It's going to run over everything. And all kinds of things are going to happen. People will be surprised. Oh my word, how did that happen? So that's my view of the situation. The oil weapon is not a weapon because the markets will be segmented. There'll be people that have oil and people who don't. And the United States is not going to let the oil companies sell all our oil at the world price in order to make more money. If necessary, they'll nationalize the oil industry. But surely nobody believes the United States government is going to let the oil leave the country and it can't get its jet fighters off the ground. And there's no diesel fuel. You'll have a situation where airline traffic stops. You'll be able to fly out of America, but wherever you land, you might not be able to get back. You could only fly to another country that had fuel. That won't be Europe. So I think I've covered it. I think I've set it out. And once again, we see just as Russia pretends it's fighting a special military operation in Donbass and overlooks that all the weapons are coming from the West. Principally, the most destructive ones for Russia are coming from Germany, and they pretend that that's not so. And the Iranians pretend that the enemy of the Americans, not the Israelis. And the Iranians, they even protect the Gulf oil sheikdoms that are the basis for the American forces' attacks on Iran. Did you see before their last retaliation against the American bases, the Iranian government announced, all of you governments, tell your citizens to get out of the territory of the American bases because we don't want to hurt any of them. In other words, the Iranians are going to protect the governments that are hosting the bases that are attacking them from the loss of any population. So there's no cost to those governments. They're never going to say to the Americans, so you go home, you caused us too much damage. Because the attacks are on the American basis only, and are only done after all the locals are warned out of the area. So here's Iran. It's removed all pressure on the Gulf states to evict the Americans. And it's confused the entire population that the enemy is America and not Israel. And Israel, who's the cause of this war, is paying no price. No one's attacking Israel. So is this intelligence? What sense does this make? None. There's no comprehension of reality. None. All the leaders of the world are living in some made-up scenario that doesn't exist, including Trump. He's probably the most deluded of all of them. So there's the situation. That's what the world actually is. And it's not worthwhile talking about anything else. So.
Craig just summed it all up.
I'm telling you. Yeah, in fact, he didn't leave me much to say. Craig, that was really a fine explanation of the affairs in the world right now. Very, very well stated. I think every American needs to listen to the last 30 minutes. I'm amazed. Great job. You didn't leave me much to work with, but I'll add a little flavor to it. Going all the way back to the real enemy of Iran is Israel. When they did the memorandum, you and I were on Mike's show around that time, and we both stated that there was no way that a ceasefire would happen. And we said at that time it was because Israel would not let it happen. And the one part that I wanted to add to what you said was part of the memorandum was that Israel would not attack Iran's ally, Hezbollah. And of course, Israel immediately began to attack Hezbollah. They had no intention. So the ability to keep a peace deal was always in Israel's hands because they had to refrain from their attacks on Hezbollah. And they said publicly, we're going to do what we're going to do. We don't care what the United States has to say. And of course, they demonstrated it immediately. And the initial Iranian break of the ceasefire was because Israel was hitting Hezbollah, as they said they were going to do, regardless of what the memorandum required. So, Trump made a deal that he had no power to enforce because Israel was going to do what they were going to do. And so to promise something that somebody else has to fulfill and you have no power or authority over them, because Trump is not about to stop sending U.S. munitions to Israel that allows them to do these things, right? So we're not going to have a peace deal. Israel's not going to allow it to happen. I think the second comment I want to make is that you talked about Israel needs to be destroyed, and I want to put that into context by their primary enemy, which is Iran. We're not going to do it, and we shouldn't do it. But the true enemy of Iran is Israel. They need to stop the tit for tat and deal with the enemy. Sun Tzu said in Art of War, if you know your enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the outcome of 100 battles. Well, Iran doesn't even know who the enemy is, much less what they're about. They're so ignorant of what's really going on over there. It's astounding. A third comment would be, the globalist agenda is to extract the resources of Russia. Russia has massive resources. And the idea that they're ever going to stop trying to capture Russia and control it and extract is unrealistic. So Russia may think they can create some kind of business opportunity and so forth, but the global powers lust for what's in Russia, and they're not going to stop till they get it. And I think the final comment I would make is that the U.S. right now produces 13 million barrels of oil a day, but we use 19 to 20 million barrels of oil a day. So we're not entirely energy independent. And Trump has been draining the strategic petroleum reserve at an extraordinary rate. We're down now to literally weeks. We're at the lowest it's ever been since we started to fill it back in 1983. And even today, America exports 4 million barrels of oil a day to foreign countries. Now, the oil coming from Venezuela is helping plug that gap. I live here close to the Gulf Coast, and those refineries were designed to refine this thick crude that comes from Venezuela. So the more of that is produced and comes in, the more helpful it's going to be. But I think we're going to see $10 gasoline in the next few weeks. The petroleum reserve is getting close to being empty, and this closure of the Strait of Hormuz is going to continue. It's not likely to be resolved in the next months that are coming up, and even when it's resolved, it takes 2 months to get anything out of there and somewhere where it can be refined. So I think we're going to see an economic hit in this country. And, Venezuela's not Venezuela, I've been talking about it. Iran's other tool, other weapon is to disrupt the midterms that are coming up. And right now, they've been really successful at diminishing the chances of us maintaining a Republican House and Senate. And if we end up with a Democratic majority in both houses, Trump's future is going to be dismal. They're certainly going to try to impeach him. I don't think they're going to have the numbers in the Senate to actually convict him. but it's going to be miserable, and any agenda he has is going to be disrupted. They're going to create political chaos in our country. So between that, and I think we're going to have effects of this created energy crisis. I think Russia has no future unless they finally come to terms with they're not just the world's gas station, but they have more nuclear weapons than anybody. And we talk about the two major wars that are coming up. Russia may be pushed to the point, even if they run Putin out of office, and the patriots put somebody in there that will actually protect their country. We're looking at the potential for nuclear war. And the idiots in Europe that are shouting from the rooftops, we've got to prepare for war with Russia. Another unfathomable idea. But we see that every day. We're faced with that. And I think my final comment is that, Craig and I have a little different paradigm we operate from. I tend to lean towards more men behind the curtain, globalists having an agenda. And their agenda is to diminish the U.S. because we're the only thing standing in the way of their New World Order. And they also lust after Russia's resources. And I see those events. And of course, Greater Israel is something they have encouraged and pursued and financed, and we're all having to live with that. So I see the globalists marching forward with all these events that are happening right now. So those are my comments.
Well, I think most of them are very supportive of what I said. And even where you could be wrong or isn't relevant to the points I made.
That's true. Yeah, I agree.
For now, and I'm just say this just because I value your ability to assess information and deal with it. The so-called American Petroleum Reserve was created when we were not energy self-sufficient. It was created when we were heavily dependent on imports of OPEC oil. It's no longer a strategic reserve. It's just something that was created when we needed one, and it's still there. And certainly it wouldn't have its exhaustion wouldn't have anything to do with our ability to produce oil and gasoline and diesel fuel. And so the first casualty of any real trouble would be the 4 million barrels a day that you said we export. They won't be exported. They'll be right here. Nothing will be exported. And we'll have, whether we're entirely independent in our fuel needs or whether we are missing a few million barrels, it won't matter. It's not going to lead to a $10 price. Now, initially, when the crisis hits, yeah, because initially the price rises and people are not prepared, and you haven't yet segmented the markets. But the United States government is not going to permit a high price globally to draw the oil out of the United States into a global market. It's not going to allow it because it means it can't get its jet fighters off the aircraft carrier deck. So the immediate effect will be segmented oil markets, and the one here will not have some astronomical price that disrupts and stops the economy. It won't be permitted because there's no need to permit it, and it won't happen. So um, I wouldn't, I think the initial effect of a world problem, not a U.S. problem, will cause Wall Street to do what they always do, make bad decisions. In fact, I think that's all they're capable of doing. I have a lot of experience with them. They're not smart people. There's no real intelligence there. There's a greed-driven process, and as long as greed is working, they're riding it, and that's how it functions. So there could be a big shock to the system, and stock market goes down, and people panic, but we're not going to be without uh, energy, or we're not going to be paying prices that stop the way America developed based on low-cost transportation from functioning. So now it's not, you see, the global force is money, and money is not just content to try to loot Russia. They loot everywhere. They loot Venezuela. We just got through watching money loot Venezuela.
Mhm.
They want to loot everything. It's like Trump said the other day. He's going to take everything in Iran belongs to us. All the food, all the oil, it all belongs to us. This is what the president said. So this is the attitude that American corporations have toward the world, toward Africa. It belongs to us. We're going to loot it. It's money. It's the attitude of money. The Russian oligarchs have the same attitude. If anybody's looting Russia, it's them. They already looted it. They looted it when the Soviet Union collapsed during the Yeltsin period. I actually was invited over to speak to the Soviet Academy of Sciences. How do we make this transition? What do we do? I explained them what to do. They didn't do it. And the oligarchs got it. And so the interest, the global interest, I don't like the word global. It was a deception to deceive countries and governments into giving up their sovereignty, giving up their independence, and becoming dependent on other countries for their needs. People don't really realize, when I was studying economics, the United States was totally self-sufficient. We practically had no imports and exports. We weren't dependent on anything. It was totally self-sufficient. In fact, we owned all our own debt. No foreigners owned our debt. The transformation of the country during my lifetime is phenomenal. It's unrecognizable. Well, so I wouldn't, I don't think Iran will have anything much to do with the midterms, because the Americans have been indoctrinated against Iran ever since 1978 or 79, when they overthrew our puppet that was ruling them and took control of the oil. Well, how long ago was 78, 79? It was a long time. You're talking about people today, they're elderly people. You had generations of Americans brainwashed against Iran. Even people who are on to Trump and don't like him anymore, they still believe Iran's our enemy. And you ask them why, they don't really know, but they just know that. And since they don't have an answer, they get mad at you for asking them. But there's this tremendous hostility among the American people to Iran, just like there is to Russia because of the long Cold War, the Soviets It was always Russia. So the Americans are accustomed to thinking of Iran and Russia as enemies. And so they're not going to blame Trump for anything Iran does, because Iran's an enemy. So I think there's some basis that the Americans didn't want war, and Trump brought them war despite his claim that he would bring them peace. He's brought them war, but they're not going to ever favor Iran in some way over Trump or any American president, because Iran has been positioned for decades as an enemy. And you can see this everywhere, and also Russia. If you pay attention to the recent statements of the recent meetings, the NATO meeting, the G7 meeting, I've cited and quoted some of these in recent columns. They're statements that declare they recognize Russia as a long-term threat to the survival of the West. They got words to that effect. Trump has signed it. And they've got words saying the same thing about Iran, that we all recognize Iran is a long-term threat to the West. And all the heads of the European states and Trump signed these things. Well, you ask them, what is this threat? What is this threat of Russia? Where do we see it? What have they done? They were forced by us into defending the Russians in Donbass. That's all they've done. What have the Iranians done? They've never attacked us. But it's in writing that they're the threat, even though none of the heads of state, including our president or his advisors, can say what the threat is. They don't know, because there's not one. There is no Russian threat. The Russians may be forced into taking action by us, forced by us. And that action may become a threat. But no threat originates with Russia, and no threats originate with Iran. Iran was doing nothing. We attacked them twice while holding peace negotiations. I mean, it's hard to imagine anything more dishonorable. You're holding peace negotiations with somebody while you attack them. Remember? No, you wouldn't. All of you are too young, even you, Gary. But this was one of the reasons that the United States justified forcing Japan into war. They said, well, we were having peace negotiations with Japan while they were planning to attack us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what we not only were holding peace negotiations with Iran, we attacked them while holding the negotiations. Well, how is this honorable? How is this Iran's fault? And once again, I've not met anyone who can tell me what Iran's done, except, they're in Israel's way. And if Iran wasn't supporting Hezbollah, Israel would gobble up Lebanon. And by the way, Gary, the agreement was not that Israel would not attack Hezbollah. Israel would not attack Lebanon. Israel would not attack Lebanon. Now, Hezbollah is just Lebanese who created a militia because the Lebanese government has no military capability. They created a militia to prevent the Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon. This is the third time they've tried it in force. They tried it twice before. And my understanding had always been Hezbollah had kicked their butts, and the vaunted Israeli Defense Army ran for their lives because they've never had to fight anybody. They just kill women and children from a distance. That's the only achievement of the Israeli army. And when they had to fight, now this is a militia. It doesn't have tanks and airplanes and heavy artillery, and at the time of those, they didn't have missiles or drones. And it easily defeated the Israeli army twice. But it appears that even though they were defeated and driven out, they managed to keep a little bit right at the bottom. And now they're trying to add another layer. This is the way they took Palestine. It took them 79 years. They took it a little layer at a time. There's maps available showing Palestine over there are 4 maps showing over the 79 years. And you can watch how Palestine disappeared. Well, if it takes 79 years to appropriate a country, that's a long time. And people kind of get accustomed. And it's only a few villages, and then nothing happens. Then there's a few more. But if you go in and do it all at once, well, that produces opposition. So it shows how patient the Israelis were. They knew we can steal it bit by bit, and there'll be controversy, and we'll agree to peace talks, and once that moves off the burner, we'll start stealing some more. And that's exactly the process. That's what's happened. And now that's what they're trying to do in Lebanon. Well, it seems quite clear who the villain is in the Middle East. It's not Iran. It wasn't the Arab League. What did the Arab League ever do? I don't know anything they ever did. Nothing. The Arabs have not been united in 1,300 years. It's been 13 centuries. They are the most disunited people, the Shia, the Sunni. They're still fighting over the succession of Muhammad in the 7th century. And this is why they're impotent. It's why they are ruled by outsiders, the Turks, the French, the British, now us, and in the future, the Israelis. They're incapable of uniting or standing together. You know, if you ever read any of T.H. Lawrence of Arabia, or just watch the movie, you can say it was impossible even to unite them, to fight for their own independence. So they've never been a force. The Iranians aren't Arabs. They're Persians. They've been there a long time. Longer than anybody but the Chinese. But what have they done? Nothing. They had their first democracy, I think around 1953. They elected a guy. He was good ruler. And we and the British decided that we had to overthrow him because we wanted to control the Iranian oil and didn't think Iran had any right to its own oil. Just like Trump said the other day, we own everything in Iran. Not just the oil, all the food, everything, we own it. That's what Trump said the last 2 or 3 days. So we overthrew him, and we ruled it by puppets. And it was not till the last year or two of the Carter presidency that the Iranians revolted and overthrew the Shah. And we've hated them ever since because they took control of their oil again. And they ceased being an American puppet state. And that's the reason we hate them, officially. But what have they done? Nothing, except want to be an independent country, out with not ruled by some foreign power. Now, why? That was the same thing we wanted to be when we had the American Revolution, as it's called. So why is it bad if Iran does it? And it's really quite amazing that we can have a war with somebody when we don't have any other reason except Israel wants us to. Is this a justifiable reason that we started war with Iran because Israel wants us to? Is this just war? What moral or philosophical doctrine does this fit? None. There's no justification for us being in this war. None whatsoever. All this talk about we've decided they can't have a nuclear weapon. Well, they've already made the decision themselves that they don't want one. But if they want one, it's none of our business. There's absolutely no business of Mr. Trump whether they have a nuclear weapon or not. They've never said we're making nuclear weapons because we hate the Americans and we're going to attack them.
Gary, you want? Oh, sorry, Craig. I thought you were done. I saw the pause, so I thought you were. I didn't want to have the uncomfortable silence.
No, it's time for me to pause. I've been talking too long, but how all of this can not be part of the narrative just blows my mind. It's extraordinary that we have governments and they have no connection whatsoever to any reality. Nothing they do or say or think. It's just like the Matrix. The whole world is in the Matrix. You know, the film The Matrix, that they have no idea of reality, none whatsoever. You can't find it anywhere in any statement. You just see statements like I said, all the heads of state and Trump, we know that Russia's the enemy. Well, how do you know that? Well, tell me about it. Oh, you must be a communist to be asking us that. And then you get the same response with man. Well, what did they do? Oh well, they're bad people. Well, why? What did they do? It's amazing. It's amazing. And, you know, ever since the Western world began losing its self-confidence and belief in itself, it lost its values.
Hmm.
It doesn't have any values. And so looting other countries is fine. And the global interest is money. The money interest. It's not an organization, Gary. It's the interest of money to loot. It's the easiest way to get riches is to steal it than to have to make it. And if you look at American investment, very little investment goes into new plant and equipment. Almost all investment is used to purchase existing assets, which tells you there are not all that many investment opportunities. So what do? Well, we're going to steal everything Venezuela has and Russia and every country. We're going to steal it. And we have different ways of doing it. I think Gary made the reference to Perkins, who wrote the book. I was a hitman for the New York banks or whatever. How we go down there and we bribe the leaders of the country. We give them tens of millions of dollars to sign a development plan and take a loan to electrify their country or something like that. And we get them in debt, and we tell them that this development plan will make you rich. You won't have any trouble paying the debt back. Well, of course, the plan fails. They can't pay the debt back. So then the IMF shows up and says, oh, well, don't worry. We have an austerity program for you, which will help you pay the debt back. And that way you protect your credit standing so that you will be able to get loans in the future when you need them. And so what is the austerity plan? Well, you have to sell everything. You got to sell the Americans any energy resources you have, your mines. You got to turn over your agricultural lands to American agribusiness. You got to fire a bunch of staff in the social programs because you can't afford them anymore. So we'll have to use the money you're paying for education and health to pay the loan, to pay the New York banks. So there go all the social programs, education, health care, they're all gone. But the New York banks will be paid, so your credit will be safe. And also, of course, we need an air base. And this is the way it works.
Yeah.
This is what the great World Bank and the great IMF, this is what they do.
Yeah. John Perkins.
They steal.
John Perkins in the Economic Hitman, this book you're talking about. Everybody needs to read it. And also,
he was part of it. He describes it. This is what I did.
For these loans from the World Bank that can't be repaid, they end up acquiring the airports, the electrical generation, anything that's a source of perpetual revenue. They end up acquiring those assets. Craig, I think maybe the only thing we disagree on is all of these thieves and these bad men, I would say, are organized, and they have names like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, Rothschild, Rockefeller, maybe even Gates today.
Palantir, Gary? Would you put Palantir in there?
Yeah. Hey, guys. Craig, I really enjoyed your talk today. I hope the audience appreciate it as much as I do.
I love this. Can I ask you guys one quick question? And this will be quick. Lindsey Graham, anybody have any thoughts on that, on his passing over the weekend?
I think
he died from the COVID vaccinations.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think he had he's 71 years old, which, by the way, is how old I am. And those sorts of health issues become a real concern. But certainly, we know he was vaxxed. We've seen the pictures. And we also know that people who inject themselves with spike proteins end up with a lot of illnesses, particularly heart illnesses. So I agree with Craig on that one, too. I think that was his ultimate demise. And unfortunately, it's going to be the demise of a lot of people that trusted the narrative.
You don't think him being in Ukraine or anything?
No.
Nah.
It's all nonsense. Look, he's not a cause. He was not a cause of anything. He was just a consequence, an example. he was heavily financed by the American military security complex and by the Israel lobby. So, of course, he's a warmonger. That's what they were buying. That's what they paid him to be. And so, yeah, he was for war with everybody, with Russia, with Iran, with whoever we could find. He couldn't get enough wars because that's what it was the military security complex in Israel financing him.
Yep.
So he was just a consequence of the fact that money runs the system. And I don't care if Gary believes that all this money is organized. I don't think they are. I've never seen it. I've had something to do with them over my professional life, and I've never seen it. I mean, believe it or not, I was once an advisor to George Soros. Really. I was an advisor to J.P. Morgan. I've been to Davos, to what do they call it, the World Economic Forum. I was invited.
And you went with Henry Kissinger and Brezhnev. I mean,
Brzezinski, Kissinger, and Schlesinger. Yeah. I mean, they have common interests, which is nothing in the way of looting. They have common interest to impose any limitations on looting. But it doesn't have to be organized. It's just a natural common interest. And they'll lobby the same way, unless they're at cross purposes. Like if two of these groups want to take over the same company, then they get in a fight.
Yeah.
But don't confuse common interests with organization, because common interest produces the results of organization without the need for it.
That's a good statement. So my iPad just went to low power mode, guys.
Guys.
Well, anyhow, I think it's great that we can have these kinds of discussions and that you two will sit there and listen to me when I go on like this. I think this is tremendous, and I hope somebody watches the program and that people, at least some people, need to have some idea, because if things get as bad as Gary thinks they will, or as I think they will, there need to be a few people with enough awareness that they can provide what little leadership can be provided. And so there needs to be always some people who have some awareness, because the point comes where if nobody has any awareness, there's no leadership. Nobody knows what to do. You can't do anything. And then the situation is irretrievable. It's just totally disastrous. So I appreciate the opportunity you give us, Mike. This is extremely important, and I hope people watch it. I mean, I hope we don't tell them so much it turns them off. They just say this can't be true. And people are like that. Like, for example, I had a colleague who I did a lot for his career. We were very close, and he never could comprehend that 9/11 was an inside job. He simply said, "Oh, our government would never do that." I said, "How do you know?" What do you know? How do you know that? "Oh, our government would never do that." Well, they did. And there are a lot of people like that. It's unacceptable to believe these things. It can't be true. That can't be true. Because they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. And so they think nobody would. It's just too awful. Oh, I'd never do anything like that. So that means neither would our government. Well, of course, our government will do literally anything. We should know that by now. It won't protect our sovereignty. They won't protect the First Amendment. An airline flight attendant can get somebody thrown off a plane because she doesn't like what it says on his T-shirt. This is the most amazing thing. And we're free. We're a free people. And we're a democracy. And none, blah, blah, blah. Tell me about it.
Guys, I appreciate this, and I know it won't be that long before we talk again. So thank you both.
Okay.
Well, thank you for hosting us.
Always, anytime. Mic drop.
I am Major General Albert Stubblebine. I am retired Army Major General. In my last assignment, my last command, I was responsible for all of the Army's strategic intelligence forces around the world. I had responsibility for the signals intelligence, photo intelligence, counterintelligence, human intelligence. They all belong to me in my last assignment. In addition, I've had other assignments in which I was responsible for, as for instance, the photo interpretation at the strategic level. In those days, we couldn't even talk about photos that came from very, very high up. Today, I'm not sure about what the classifications are, but everybody knows that we're looking at photographs that come from very, very high altitudes. As a young officer, I was responsible for the Army's Photo Interpretation Center stationed in the National Photo Interpretation Center. So I have had a lot of experience in looking at photographs. Photographs from a strategic level, photographs from a tactical level. I have looked at many, many different kinds of photographs from many, many different platforms on many, many different countries around the world.
Okay, so on September the 11th in 2001, what hit the Pentagon?
I don't know exactly what hit it, but I do know from the photographs that I have analyzed and looked at very, very carefully, it was not an airplane.
What made you believe that?
Well, for one thing, if you look at the hole that was made in the Pentagon, and you look at the distance that look at the nose of an airplane, and then look to see where the wings are on the airplane, the nose penetrated far enough so that there should have been wing marks on the walls of the Pentagon. I have been unable to find those wing marks. So where were they? Did this vehicle, or whatever it was, have wings? Apparently not, because if it had had wings, they would have made marks on the side of the Pentagon. One person counteracted my theory and said, oh, well, you've got it all wrong, and the reason that it's wrong is that as the airplane came across, one wing tipped down and hit the ground and broke off. I said, fine, that's possible. One wing could have broken off. But if I understand airplanes correctly, most airplanes have two wings. I haven't met an airplane with only one wing. So where was the mark for the second wing? Okay, one broke off. There should have been a mark for the second wing. I could not find that in any of the photographs that I've analyzed. Now, I've been very careful to not say what went in there. Why? Because I don't have that evidence. What I do have is my own analysis of the photographs that have been made available, and I've looked at them very, very carefully. I've taken a look at this, the statistics on the airplane that should have been there if it was an airplane. They don't match. I don't care what anybody else says. My belief is that they do not match. So therefore, I have been on public record as saying it was not an airplane. Period.
So if it was no airplane, there is still an airplane missing with, I think, 65 people in it, or?
Somewhere there's an airplane missing. But somewhere there are other things that aren't explained by the public news that's been made available. For instance, the hole out in Pennsylvania does not look like it was made by an airplane. So what was it? Now, I don't have, there's a difference between that. And I've not gone on public record about the hole out in Pennsylvania. Why? Because I haven't been able to examine that. I could examine the photographs of the Pentagon personally with my own expert eyes, because in several of my assignments I have been responsible for the photo interpretation portions of for the Army. And in my last assignment I was responsible for all of the Army's strategic intelligence forces around the world. That included signals intelligence, photo intelligence, counterintelligence, and human intelligence. They all belong to me. I was responsible. So I don't do this in a casual manner. I do it looking through experienced, professional eyes, not through some wifty somebody out there saying, oh, well, you just don't understand what the hell is going on. And my answer to that is, go take a look at the photographs.
So you take a look at the photographs as an expert of that, and you come to the conclusion that there was no airplane hitting the Pentagon, but something hit the Pentagon,
Oh, yeah.
and something
No
are
doubt
behind
that
that
something hit
plot.
the Pentagon.
So,
That there's no doubt. So the question is, what was it? I have theory, but I'm not going to go on public record with something that I can't prove. What I have said is based on my own analysis, with my own expertise and my own knowledge.
There are two black boxes were found, one from the Pentagon and one from the Pennsylvania, which have been officially released by the NTSB. And the Pilots for Truth people took the data out of the black boxes and put them into simulator. And using that data, you can actually prove that the official story is not true, because they came from a different direction at a different altitude and at different speeds. So you can use actually the government data from the NTSB, which were publicized.
This is fascinating.
You don't know about that?
No, I did not know about that. But what that says is, what I'm saying is correct. See, now that's very interesting, because that is a different piece of information from mine. My expertise has been in the intelligence world. That's exactly what I've been responsible for. I was supposed to find out what the enemy was doing before the enemy did it, so that we could take action against the enemy. That's intelligence, okay? Before the fact. So we always rely not on a single piece of data before we make a statement, but on multiple. And the more pieces of data that you have that correlate, the better you know exactly what is going on, okay? So you have added to me a brand new piece of data, and I am delighted to know that, because I felt that I was kind of walking out on a limb when I went on record saying that it was not an airplane. I've never believed that it was an airplane since I'd looked at the photographs. Up until that time I looked at the photographs, I accepted what was being said. After I looked at it, no way.
The interesting thing is that this is not about conspiracy, because you can use the facts from the flight data recorder, which are official data, and you can recreate the flight path, and it's a totally different flight path to what the official story is. And I don't understand why the media is kind of not saying, look, there's a contradiction there between NTSB information and government 9/11 Commission information.
I'll tell you why. You know, we pride ourselves with the free press. I do not believe the free press is free anymore. It's very expensive. It's very expensive. And the press is saying what they have been told to say about this. Now, do I have proof of that? No. But I believe that certainly the stories that were told about 9/11 were false. I mean, you take a look at the buildings falling down. They didn't fall down because airplanes hit them. They fell down because of explosives went off inside. Demolition.
Absolutely.
Look at Building 7, for God's sakes.
It's a smoking gun.
Building 7, when you looked at it just before the owner said pull it, okay, there was one little fire that you could see. Everything else had been turned out. It had been put out. Then the owner of the building says, pull it. Now, does that ring a bell from demolition?
Absolutely, that's the term for it.
The exact term. And right after he said pull it, what happened? Building 7 went in its own footprint. It didn't fall down to its side. It didn't fall this direction or that direction. In its own footprint. Just like the two towers. In their own footprint. But when you look at the footprints of the buildings that came down, when you look at the temperatures that you can create with fuel in a gas tank or a fuel tank of an airplane, and then you investigate the amount of heat that it would be required to melt the superstructure of the buildings, that came tumbling down. When you put all of that together, the one thing that shows, it does not make sense.
It doesn't make sense with physics.
Does not match the facts, period. So then, see, it's after that point where you say, okay, if the facts don't match, what did happen? What is the real cause? Okay? And why isn't the 9/11 Commission redoing the investigation? What are they afraid of? There are so many pieces of this 9/11 story that don't match, that don't fit, that don't make sense. So why isn't somebody going back and reinvestigating and putting down fact, and correlating all of that? What is it they do not want the public to know?
All